Well, hello, welcome back to At First Glance with Jared Wasson.
And Pastor Michael Miller. Good to be with you.
So today, Pastor Michael, we're going to be going through one of the probably most famous parables of all time, parable of the Good Samaritan.
All right.
I think this one's really interesting because it kind of transcends religious boundaries and cultural boundaries. We live in a secular nation, and we still have hospitals named after, the Good Samaritan and all kinds of institutions in that way.
Mhm.
I think even non-Christians know about this story
Mhm.
when maybe they don't know much else about the Bible. So I think this is a really interesting one to get into today.
Yeah, it's a reference that I think most people have some understanding of, even if they don't know the story it comes from.
Yeah, so I'm excited to tell the story.
All right.
All right. So if you're following along, this is Luke 10. We're going to be reading verses 25 through 37 today. Just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" He said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" He answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And he said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live." But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him, and when I come back I will repay you whatever more you spend." "Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" He said. "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." So it's a short parable, but there's a lot there.
There is quite a bit there, yes.
I think one of the things that stands out to me is that when we hear this parable a lot, we hear it in the context of this is our blueprint to treat our neighbors, which I think is true. But I think there's even more there. I think even more powerfully, this parable shows how God treats us, which is, I think, really cool. I know when I was doing some research on this, the church fathers refer to the Samaritan as Christ, which is interesting because culturally that's very taboo. They call the inn the church, which I think is another really interesting thing. They call the wine and the oil poured into the man's wounds as the blood of Christ healing humanity. So there's a lot of context there.
So they kind of make an allegory of the whole thing.
Absolutely.
In their interpretation of it.
Yeah, which is, I think, a really cool way to see this story. Maybe a fresh way of seeing this story.
Yeah. The piece that catches my attention is, the opening question to test Jesus.
Yes.
And then his response, "What do you read in the law?" And affirmation of his statement, "Love the Lord your God, your neighbor as yourself." But then he wants to vindicate himself. He wants to justify himself.
Yep.
And that movement to always, like, I want to feel good about myself. I want to prove that I'm okay, that I'm good. So I want to draw a circle around the people that constitute my neighbor, so that I can focus there, and then I can let the rest of it go.
Yep.
mean, he doesn't say that directly, but I think that's the intention there. Who's my neighbor?
Yeah.
Who's in that circle?
And it's really interesting you say that, because culturally, right now, that's a big question in our time.
Mm-hmm.
Who is our neighbor?
Mm-hmm.
And this story, I think, tells us that even though the untouchables of today are our neighbors, and we are to go out to them, meet them, and help them and heal them. So culturally, right now, that might probably a little. What's the word I'm looking for?
Provocative.
A little provocative, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really interesting, especially in light of what we're going through today.
Mm-hmm.
I think these stories in the Bible, as we go through our time, they pick up different meanings as we go. And it's important to say, in this moment, what would Jesus do right now?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is always to go out to the unloved.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what's sticking out to me right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, the provocative piece in the story itself is, of course, that the people who should know the law best,
Mm-hmm.
The leaders of the law, that the priest and the Levites see the man and walk by on the other side and don't do anything to help him. It's the Samaritan who reaches out.
Yeah.
And just a couple of weeks ago in our reading, Jesus sets his face to Jerusalem and goes to a Samaritan town where they don't accept him, and two of the disciples, James and John, want to call down fire from heaven on this town.
Right.
So now it's that Samaritan culture
Mm-hmm.
that rejected Jesus at the beginning of his journey. He takes them as an example of actually living out this love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just really love this story. My favorite thing Jesus does
Mm-hmm.
is answer a question with a question.
He does that a lot.
He does that a lot, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I had a teacher in high school that did that too.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was in high school, it really bothered me. So I wonder how this guy's feeling when he asks Jesus a question and he gets questioned right back.
Uh-huh.
And I wonder how often we do that to God right now, and maybe ways that we don't think about. But when we're trying to be open to an answer that we've asked God, I think it's important to listen to ourselves too and how we're feeling at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a lot of pieces to this story here that we can go a lot of different ways with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also think that that part you were talking about is almost a condemnation of the religion of the time, because it shows how the religious leaders were neglecting their duty to love one another.
Mm-hmm.
And as this man rightly recalls, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So he knew the law.
Mm-hmm.
And I would assume that these people in this parable knew the law, and yet they try to vindicate themselves by saying, "Who is my neighbor?"
Mm-hmm.
Again, to your point. Yeah.
What? I mean, I have a story to share about that, but first, to name the twist that happens at the conclusion. So the man's asked the question, "Who is my neighbor? Who's the one that I'm called to love?"
Yep.
And at the end, Jesus asks, "Who was the neighbor?"
Yeah.
So instead of where's the circle of people that I'm called to love, we get an example of what it looks like to act as neighbor.
Absolutely.
And no limitations. So the other day I was visiting in Racine, sitting out on the sidewalk outside of a coffee shop with a couple members of my family, and behind me there's this explosion.
An explosion.
A car rear-ended an SUV
Oh, wow.
at the intersection, just like right behind us.
Mm-hmm.
So the airbags all went off, and it was this big boom.
Yeah.
And I sat there looking. And it seemed like forever, but then the people in the car opened their doors and got out.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was fine, but in that moment, I'm sitting there observing that and then observing myself sitting there, afraid, like what just happened? How are they doing? But if I go over there, what am I going to offer?
Hmm.
I watched somebody come out of the coffee shop, one of the servers, who checked in with the people who were getting out of the car, but I'm still sitting there.
Hmm.
And you know, it's easy to judge the lawyer in this story, but when I watch myself, there are times when fear gets in the way, or when, I guess part of it too was, I had the opportunity to just relax with my family, and now there's this going on.
Yeah.
Um,
Never a
there
moment's
was
rest
that
for a
there
pastor.
was that piece in my mind, like, ah,
Just sat
you
down.
just spoiled my day. Um, so that's true. I mean, there's just selfish desires on our part. There's fears that get in the way, and what happens at the end of that story is this. We've been given the example of the neighbor, and now how do we live into that? It gives me an opportunity to reflect on that moment and what are the fears that are functioning in me? What are the selfish needs that get in the way of me being able to actually be present to people who are struggling or suffering or needing attention?
Right.
Um, that never goes away. So it's easy to want to draw that circle again and say, well, that's not really the police came and then the fire trucks came and they were right there and that's their job.
Yeah.
And it's true that it's their job and they're more qualified to address that situation than I was, but to be present, to let everybody that suddenly had their day disrupted by that accident, to have a human face that showed them care and concern might have been transformative.
Absolutely.
So
I'm glad you brought that up. It kind of reminds me of a story about an organization I've heard. Have you heard of the Humane Society? Not the animal one, but the Humane Society.
no.
It's out of a place called Nantucket Island, which I'm sure you've heard of, because I've heard of it. I don't know where it is, but I've heard of it. Geography is not my strong suit. But before the time of the Coast Guard and everything, they had a job where if there was a big storm and there was some kind of shipwreck, they would ring this bell and they would all wait on the beach in these little like houses of refuge.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was a shipwreck, their job was to go out into the storm, find the shipwreck during an active storm, see if there's any survivors and save them. Mm-hmm. They had this motto that really stuck with me when I heard this story, is that because obviously this is an incredibly dangerous job, their motto was, you have to go out, you don't have to come back. So it was a massive responsibility.
Wow.
But I think that's kind of what we're saying here too, is that we have to go out to these people. It doesn't matter the risk, and when we talk about carrying the cross of Jesus, I think that's what it means. I mean, you could say, what is Jesus's cross? It's coming down to the people who need him.
Mm-hmm.
Divine condensation, whatever the word is, not condensation. That's not right. Condescension.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, and we see this man coming from Jerusalem, which is, a city in Palestine, but it's allegorically it's the city of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
To Jericho, a city of sin, right? Think of like Las Vegas from earlier,
Mm-hmm.
or from today's modern world. So we have a man coming from the city of God to the city of sin. He's going the wrong way, and this man stoops down to help him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really powerful image for Christ,
mm-hmm.
that he comes and saves us. It doesn't matter what it costs him. He puts us up in an inn and he pays for us. And it's just an image that's really stuck with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an image of Christ-like love, and so that's what we're called to again in the story. And as I've reflected, I don't always live up to that. Mm-hmm. We don't, and yet, but we're called to keep wrestling with that and
Absolutely.
wrestle with that as a community. So it takes the simple answer and makes it more challenging.
Yep. Absolutely,
in
it
a
does.
life-giving way. Because if we really grapple with it, then we keep growing into that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Jared.
Well, thank you, Pastor. This has been a great talk. I
That was
love
a
this
good,
story.
good beginning to this story.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you for listening. This has been At First Glance. See you next time.
See you next week.